The massive educational vessel Aurora drifted silently through space, its silver hull gleaming under the light of distant stars. Inside the ship, students from 12 different alien species gathered in the main observation deck, their various forms of excitement filling the air with clicks, hums, and musical tones. Professor Valak stood at the front of the group, his tall gray form commanding attention. The Threnody scholar had dedicated his life to studying different civilizations across the galaxy. His large black eyes scanned the young faces before him, noting the anticipation in each species' unique features. "Today marks a historic moment," Professor Valak announced, his voice carrying the musical quality typical of his people. "We welcome our 13th species to the Galactic Educational Exchange Program. The humans of Earth have finally achieved the technological level required to join our studies." A young Bruthan student named Keth raised one of his 4 muscular arms. His warrior species was known for their direct approach to everything. "Professor, what makes these humans different from the other species we have studied?" "That is exactly what we are here to discover," Professor Valak replied. "From our long-distance observations, humans appear to be a typical developing species. They show signs of territorial behavior, resource competition, and individual survival instincts. We expect them to follow the standard patterns we have seen in most civilizations." Near the back of the group, a small Xiran student named Pip fluttered her delicate wings nervously. Her trader species valued efficiency above all else. "How long will they be staying aboard our vessel?" "The standard cultural exchange period is 30 rotations," the professor answered. "During this time, we will observe their customs, test their problem-solving abilities, and evaluate their potential contribution to galactic society." The students murmured among themselves in various languages as a soft chime echoed through the ship. The Aurora's communication system activated, and Captain Nexus announced that the human delegation shuttle was approaching the docking bay. "Remember your protocols," Professor Valak instructed his students. "We are here to learn, not to judge. Each species brings unique perspectives to our understanding of life in the galaxy." The group made their way to the main docking bay where crew members were already preparing for the arrival. The bay doors opened with a smooth mechanical sound, revealing the black void of space beyond. A small Earth vessel approached, its design simple but functional compared to the elegant curves of the Aurora. As the human shuttle settled onto the landing platform, the alien students pressed closer to get their first look at the new species. The shuttle door opened with a hiss of equalizing atmosphere, and 3 humans stepped out. The first human was a tall male with short brown hair and calm blue eyes. He wore a dark blue uniform with various insignia that suggested military background. Behind him came a female with longer brown hair tied back neatly, carrying what appeared to be communication devices. The third human was a male with black hair and kind eyes, holding a data pad and looking around with obvious curiosity. "Greetings," the tall human said, his voice steady and clear. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. This is Dr. Rebecca Hayes, our linguistics specialist, and Michael Rodriguez, our cultural attaché. We are honored to participate in this exchange program." Professor Valak stepped forward, his translator device converting his musical language into human speech. "Welcome aboard the Aurora, Captain Morrison. I am Professor Valak, and these are my students from across the galaxy. We look forward to learning about human civilization." Captain Morrison nodded respectfully, then did something that surprised everyone present. Instead of discussing diplomatic protocols or asking about the ship's capabilities, his first question was completely unexpected. "Professor Valak, I need to know about the safety systems aboard your vessel, particularly those relating to the protection of young passengers." The professor's large eyes blinked in confusion. "Safety systems?" "Yes," Dr. Hayes stepped forward, her voice gentle but firm. We observed several young individuals among your students. What emergency procedures do you have in place specifically? For their protection, Michael Rodriguez consulted his datapad and added, "Our Earth protocols require us to understand evacuation routes, medical facilities, and emergency communication systems before we can properly participate in any program involving minors." The alien students exchanged glances. In all their previous cultural exchanges, no species had ever asked about the protection of young ones as their first priority. Most civilizations focused on trade opportunities, military alliances, or technological sharing. Keth, the young Bruthan warrior, stepped forward boldly. "Humans, why do you concern yourselves with the welfare of alien young? They are not of your species." Captain Morrison looked genuinely surprised by the question. "They are children," he said simply, as if that explained everything. "It doesn't matter what species they are. Children need protection, but they serve no purpose to your survival," Pip the Zoran pointed out, her wings fluttering with confusion. "Why waste resources on individuals who cannot contribute to your mission's success?" Dr. Hayes knelt down to be at eye level with the small alien. "On Earth, we believe that protecting children is the most important thing any adult can do. They represent the future of all our species." Professor Valek found himself fascinated by this unexpected turn. "Captain Morrison, are you saying that humans prioritize the welfare of young ones above other considerations?" "Always," Jake replied without hesitation. "The safety of children comes before everything else. Before profit, before politics, before personal safety. It's not just our law, it's who we are as a species." Michael Rodriguez pulled out a small device and showed it to the group. "This is a child safety beacon. Every human adult carries one. If any child anywhere is in danger, we receive an alert and respond immediately." "Even for alien children you have never met?" asked Valeth, a quiet Threnody student. "Especially then," Dr. Hayes answered. "A child in danger is a child in danger. Species doesn't matter." The alien students stood in stunned silence. Professor Valik's academic mind raced to process this information. In all his years of studying galactic civilizations, he had never encountered a species that placed the welfare of alien young above their own interests. "This is most unusual," the professor admitted. "Perhaps you could explain more about these protective instincts during our cultural exchange sessions." Captain Morrison smiled for the first time since boarding. "We would be happy to share our perspectives, Professor. But first, could someone please show us those emergency systems? We really do need to understand how to keep everyone safe." As the group began moving toward the ship's interior, the alien students whispered among themselves in dozens of languages. None of them had expected their newest study subjects to be so concerned with protection rather than power. Professor Valik made a mental note to revise his research expectations. The humans were already proving to be far more interesting than any species he had studied before. 3 days had passed since the humans arrived aboard the Aurora. Professor Valek watched from his office as Captain Morrison, Dr. Hayes, and Michael Rodriguez mingled with the alien students in the common areas. The humans had spent most of their time asking questions about the young aliens rather than discussing their own culture. "Professor," Keth the Bruthan student approached his desk. "The humans keep asking strange questions about our childhood experiences and family structures. They seem more interested in how we protect our young than in our military capabilities." Professor Valik nodded thoughtfully. "I have observed this as well. It is time to conduct our standard cultural demonstration. Perhaps this will help us understand their true nature." The professor activated the ship's communication system. "All students and guests, please report to Holodeck 7 for today's cultural simulation exercise." Within minutes, the large holographic chamber filled with curious alien students and the 3 human delegates. Professor Valik stood at the control panel, his long fingers dancing over the crystalline interface. "Today we will test human problem-solving abilities through simulation," he announced. We have created a holographic representation of a typical human city based on our orbital observations of Earth. The scenario will present challenges that reveal how humans respond under pressure. Captain Morrison stepped forward. What kind of challenges, Professor? You will see, Valak replied with what might have been a smile on his alien features. Please step into the simulation field. The three humans exchanged glances but moved into the designated area. The holodeck shimmered, and suddenly they found themselves standing on a busy street corner in what looked like downtown Chicago. Tall, buildings reached toward a blue sky, and holographic humans walked past them, going about their daily business. The alien students gathered around the observation area, watching through transparent barriers as the simulation began. Professor Valak expected the humans to explore their surroundings, perhaps comment on the accuracy of the recreation, or begin discussing strategy for whatever test was coming. Instead, Dr. Hayes immediately walked over to a group of simulated human children playing near a fountain. These are remarkably detailed, she called back to her colleagues. The expressions, the movements, everything looks perfectly real. Michael Rodriguez joined her, kneeling down to observe the holographic children more closely. The technology is incredible. They even captured how children interact with each other. Professor Valak was puzzled. Most species use their first moments in the simulation to assess threats or opportunities. The humans seemed fascinated by the artificial children. Beginning scenario, the professor announced. The peaceful city scene suddenly changed. Warning. Sirens began wailing from hidden speakers. The holographic sky darkened, and explosions echoed from somewhere beyond the visible cityscape. Panic spread through the simulated population as people began running in different directions. Attack on the city, Professor Valak explained to his students. Standard test for military response and survival instincts. Watch how they prioritize their actions. The alien students leaned forward with interest. This was the moment when most species revealed their true nature. Warriors fought, traders looked for profit opportunities, scholars sought information. Diplomats tried to negotiate. The humans did something completely different. Captain Morrison immediately ran toward the group of simulated children who had been playing by the fountain. The artificial children were crying and calling for their parents, their programming designed to create realistic panic responses. Rebecca, Michael, help me organize these kids, Jake called out. Dr. Hayes was already moving, her translator device switching rapidly between different languages as she spoke soothingly to various groups of simulated children. It's okay. We're going to keep you safe. Stay together. Michael Rodriguez began coordinating with adult simulation characters, not to plan military strategy or escape routes, but to establish protective groups around the youngest simulated beings. Fascinating, whispered Velith, the young Threnody student. They are not trying to escape or fight. They are gathering the weakest individuals. Keth snorted with his species' version of disdain. Inefficient. They should secure strategic positions while they can. In the simulation, explosions grew louder and closer. The holographic damage began affecting buildings in the distance, creating an atmosphere of genuine danger. Most species would have started moving toward safety by now. Captain Morrison refused to leave the fountain area until every simulated child was accounted for. He moved through the panicking crowd, lifting artificial children who had fallen, reuniting them with their simulated families, and creating safe zones away from falling debris. There's a small one over there, Dr. Hayes pointed to a holographic child who had become separated from the group. Without hesitation, she ran directly into what appeared to be a dangerous area to reach the artificial being. Rebecca, be careful, Morrison called, but he was doing the same thing on the other side of the simulation, placing himself between potential threats and the simulated children. The alien students watched in amazement as the humans completely ignored what appeared to be optimal survival strategies. When simulated emergency vehicles arrived, the humans immediately began helping load children first, then elderly simulated beings, then adults. Why are they not saving themselves first? Pip the Zeran asked, her wings trembling with confusion. Professor Valak was taking rapid notes on his data pad. They appear to have some kind of biological compulsion to protect young organisms, even artificial ones. In the simulation, Michael Rodriguez was arguing with a simulated emergency responder. No, children first. Always children first. Age doesn't matter, size doesn't matter, children get priority. The holographic responder, programmed with standard galactic emergency protocols, kept trying to follow adult-first evacuation procedures. Michael physically blocked the emergency vehicle until the simulated children were loaded safely aboard. This is unprecedented, Professor Valak murmured to himself. The simulation continued for another 20 minutes. Throughout the entire scenario, the humans never once prioritized their own safety over that of the artificial children. They organized evacuation routes with children at the front. They shared their limited resources with the youngest simulations first. They even argued with holographic authority figures who suggested leaving slower children behind for efficiency. When the simulation finally ended, the three humans stood in the holodeck covered in artificial dust and debris, exhausted but satisfied. Every simulated child in their area had been evacuated safely. "Excellent work," Captain Morrison told his teammates. "0 child casualties in our sector." The alien students stared in stunned silence. Professor Valak slowly approached the humans as the holographic city faded away. "Captain Morrison," he said carefully, "you do realize those were not real children?" Jake looked surprised by the question. Of course, but they were programmed to act like real children. They were afraid. They needed help. What else were we supposed to do? "Save yourselves," Keth stated bluntly. "Secure resources, plan strategic responses, normal survival behavior." Dr. Hayes shook her head. "Normal for who? On Earth, adults who abandon children in emergencies are considered criminals. It doesn't matter if the children are human, alien, or even artificial. If they need protection, we protect them." "But why?" Valith asked, genuine curiosity in her musical voice. Michael Rodriguez smiled gently. "Because that's what makes us human. Not our technology or our weapons or our intelligence. Our willingness to sacrifice everything to protect those who cannot protect themselves." Professor Valak looked at his notes, then at his students, then back at the humans. "In 30 years of conducting these simulations, no species had ever behaved this way. I believe," he said slowly, "we need to completely revise our understanding of human civilization." The Aurora shuddered violently, throwing everyone in the dining hall to the floor. Emergency lights began flashing red throughout the ship as the main power flickered and died. In the darkness, alien voices cried out in fear and confusion. Captain Morrison was the first to get back on his feet. "Everyone stay calm," he called out, his military training taking over. "Rebecca, Michael, sound off." "I'm here," Dr. Hayes replied from somewhere in the darkness. "Are you injured?" "Fine," came Michael Rodriguez's voice. "What about the students? The emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in a dim red glow. Around the dining hall, alien students were picking themselves up, some clearly hurt from the sudden impact. Professor Valak's tall form appeared near the main entrance, his usually calm demeanor showing signs of stress. "All students, remain where you are," the professor commanded. "The ship has suffered some kind of collision. Emergency protocols are now in effect." Another violent shake ran through the Aurora, followed by the sound of metal grinding against metal. Through the large viewing windows, they could see chunks of rock floating past. The ship had entered an asteroid field. Captain Morrison moved quickly to where a small Zeran student named Zilla was crying, her delicate wings damaged from the fall. Without hesitation, he knelt beside her. "Hey there. It's going to be okay. Let me take a look at that wing." "Jake," Dr. Hayes called softly. "We have bigger problems." She was kneeling beside Pip, another young Zoran who appeared to be unconscious. Her breathing was shallow, and a strange blue liquid was seeping from a cut on her forehead. The ship's communication system crackled to life. Captain Nexus's voice filled the dining hall, though the transmission was broken and unclear. All passengers. Immediate evacuation. Asteroid field. Hull breach in sections. Evacuation pods. Adult passengers first. Professor Valek began organizing his students according to standard galactic emergency procedures. Adult students form groups near the exits. Adolescent students wait for the second wave. Youngest students will be evacuated in the final phase once all systems are secured. Captain Morrison looked up from treating Zila's wing. Did he just say adults first? Standard protocol, Keth the Bruthan replied, helping to support an injured classmate. Adults have the best survival skills and the most value to society. They evacuate first to ensure species survival. Jake stood up slowly, his face showing disbelief. You're going to leave the children for last? It is logical, Velith the Threnody student explained. Adults can reproduce and create new young. Children consume resources but cannot contribute to survival efforts. Dr. Hayes looked up from treating Pip's head wound. That's barbaric. Professor Valek overheard the conversation as he guided older students toward the emergency exits. Dr. Hayes, this is how every civilized species handles emergency evacuations. The most valuable individuals are saved first. The most valuable individuals are the children, Michael Rodriguez stated firmly. He was helping a young student from a species the humans hadn't met yet, a small being with soft fur and large, frightened eyes. Another massive shake hit the Aurora. This time, the lights went out completely, leaving them in total darkness. When the emergency power returned, they could hear the distant sound of evacuation pods launching. The adult alien students were already being evacuated. Humans, Professor, Valek called out. You must join the adult evacuation group immediately. Captain Morrison looked around the dining hall at the dozen young alien students who were still waiting. Some were injured, others were terrified. All of them were looking to the adults for guidance and protection. No, Jake said simply. Excuse me? Professor Valek's translator device made his confusion clear. I said no. We're not leaving without the kids. Dr. Hayes stood up from where she was still treating Pip. Jake's right. We don't abandon children. Ever. But they are not human children, Keth pointed out, genuinely confused. They are not even your species. Doesn't matter, Michael replied. He was now holding the small, furry alien student who was shaking with fear. A child is a child. The ship shook again, more violently than before. Through the viewing windows, they could see that the Aurora was moving deeper into the asteroid field. Pieces of rock were striking the hull with increasing frequency. Captain Morrison moved to the communication panel and activated the ship-wide frequency. Captain Nexus, this is Captain Morrison. We need to change the evacuation protocol immediately. The alien captain's voice came back crackling with static. Captain Morrison, you must report to evacuation pod bay 7 immediately. Adult humans have priority boarding. Negative, Captain. We're implementing human emergency protocols. Children, first always. That is not standard procedure, came the reply. Adults must be preserved for species survival. Jake looked around at the frightened young aliens. With respect, Captain, your standard procedure is wrong. Dr. Hayes had managed to wake up Pip, who was now crying for her parents. Rebecca gently picked up the small Zoran and began moving toward the exit. We're getting you somewhere safe, honey. Professor Valek stepped in front of her. Dr. Hayes, you cannot take evacuation priority from adults. It violates every known emergency protocol. Then your protocols need to change, she replied firmly. Michael Rodriguez joined them, still carrying the small, furry student. Professor, on Earth we have a saying, women and children first, not women and children last. Another group of older alien students ran past them, heading for the evacuation bays. As they passed, Captain Morrison called out to them, "Wait! Help us get the younger students to safety first." Most of the older aliens kept running, but a few stopped. A teenage Threnody named Corvex looked back at the group of frightened children, then at the determined humans. "This is inefficient," Corvex said slowly. "But perhaps there is wisdom in protecting those who cannot protect themselves." He returned and gently lifted one of the smaller students. "Come, little one." The humans. "All right, you should be safe first." Professor Valek watched in amazement as more of his older students began to follow the human example. Instead of rushing to save themselves, they were helping the youngest and most vulnerable students reach the evacuation pods. "This is unprecedented," the professor murmured. The ship lurched again, and they could hear the grinding sound of metal being torn apart. Time was running out, but the humans refused to move without ensuring every young alien was safely evacuated first. "Why?" Keth asked, as he helped carry an injured young student. "Why risk your own lives for alien children?" Captain Morrison looked back at him as they moved toward the evacuation bay. "Because someone has to. Because they can't protect themselves. Because it's the right thing to do." "But what if you die?" Velith asked. Dr. Hayes smiled sadly. "Then we die knowing we saved the future of 12 different species. That's not dying. That's living." As they reached the evacuation bay, Captain Morrison pushed past the adult aliens waiting in line and began loading children into the escape pods first. Some of the adults protested, but others began to help. For the first time in galactic history, an emergency evacuation was putting children first. The humans had started something that would change how the galaxy thought about survival forever. The escape pods drifted in the darkness of space, their small engines carrying the survivors away from the damaged Aurora. Inside Pod 7, Captain Morrison checked on the young alien students they had rescued. Dr. Hayes was treating injuries while Michael Rodriguez tried to keep everyone calm. "Pod 7 to all pods," Jake spoke into the communication device. "Status report on all passengers, especially the young ones." One by one, the other escape pods responded. The human insistence on children first had saved dozens of young alien lives, but they were now stranded in space with limited supplies and no clear rescue plan. "Captain Morrison," Professor Valek's voice came through from Pod 3. "I must ask you something. How did you know to contact your homeworld so quickly?" Jake smiled grimly. "I didn't contact Earth about the evacuation. I contacted them 3 days ago when we first arrived on your ship." 3 days ago? The professor sounded confused. "But why?" Dr. Hayes looked up from bandaging a young Zoran's wing. "Jake, tell them about the protocol." Captain Morrison activated the wideband communication so all the pods could hear. "When any human adult encounters children of any species anywhere in the galaxy, we automatically send a location update to Earth's Child Protection Network. It's standard procedure." "Child Protection Network?" Velith's voice came from Pod 5. "Every human settlement, every Earth ship, every diplomatic station maintains constant contact with our child safety systems," Michael explained. "When children are in danger anywhere in the universe, Earth responds." As if summoned by his words, new contacts appeared on their emergency scanners. Ships were approaching fast, much faster than should have been possible. Multiple vessels approaching, came Captain Nexus's voice from the lead pod. "Unknown configuration. They appear to be human." Jake checked his communication device. "Earth Fleet Rescue 7 to Aurora survivors. We have your location. Prepare for emergency pickup. Priority, rescue for all miners aboard." Professor Valek's voice was filled with wonder. "Captain Morrison, how many ships did Earth send?" "Checking now," Jake replied, scanning the approaching fleet. "Looks like 12 rescue vessels, 4 medical ships, 2 supply transports, and 1 command carrier." 19 ships? Keth's warrior training made him appreciate such numbers. "For 1 damaged educational vessel?" Dr. Hayes smiled as she continued treating the young aliens. Actually, that's a small response. When children are involved, Earth usually sends everything available. The first rescue ship reached them within minutes. Through the pod's small window, they could see human crew members preparing rescue equipment. The ship's communication system activated. This is Commander Lisa Chen of the rescue vessel Sanctuary. We are prepared for immediate child evacuation. All minor passengers will be transferred first to our medical facilities. Commander, Captain Morrison responded, we have injured alien children aboard. They may need specialized care. Understood. Captain, we have xenobiologists and universal medical systems standing by. Every child will receive whatever care they need. As the rescue ships began collecting the escape pods, Professor Valek found himself in the same transport as the 3 human delegates. He watched in fascination as the human crew immediately focused on the alien children, providing food, medical care, and comfort without any regard for species differences. Dr. Hayes, the professor said quietly, may I ask you about this child protection network you mentioned? Rebecca looked up from where she was helping a young Threnody student eat human rations. What would you like to know? How does it work? How can your entire planet respond so quickly to protect alien children you have never met? Dr. Hayes smiled warmly. It started centuries ago, long before we knew other species existed. Every human community created networks to protect all children in their area. When we spread to other planets, we connected all the networks together. Michael Rodriguez joined the conversation. Now every human anywhere in the galaxy is part of the same protection system. When any child anywhere is in danger, everyone responds. But the resources, Professor Valek protested. The cost of maintaining such a system across space. Professor, Captain Morrison interrupted gently, what is the cost of failing to protect a child? The alien scholar had no answer to that question. The rescue fleet reached Earth's closest station 6 hours later. As they docked, Professor Valek watched through the viewing ports as hundreds of humans rushed to help. Medical teams, child care. Specialists, engineers, and volunteers all worked together with the single goal of ensuring every young alien passenger was safe and comfortable. This is incredible, Velith whispered, as human doctors examined her injuries. They have prepared facilities specifically designed for our species. A human nurse named David knelt down beside the young Threnody. We've been studying your biology. Since we learned you were in danger, we wanted to make sure we could take proper care of you. Keth, the young Bruthan warrior, approached Captain Morrison as they walked through the station. Human Jake, I must understand something. Your people spent enormous resources to save us. What do you expect in return? Jake looked genuinely puzzled. In return? Yes. Payment, trade agreements, military alliances. What do humans gain from protecting alien children? Captain Morrison stopped walking and looked directly at the young alien. Keth, we gain the knowledge that children are safe. That's payment enough. Dr. Hayes was nearby, watching as human child care specialists played with alien youngsters, learning their games and making them laugh despite the trauma they had experienced. Keth, on Earth we have a saying, it takes a village to raise a child. Now our village includes the entire galaxy. Professor Valek was taking notes constantly, documenting everything he observed. The humans had created systems, networks, and entire organizations dedicated solely to protecting children of any species. They had built their civilization around the protection of the vulnerable. Professor, Michael Rodriguez approached with, a datapad. Earth's Child Protection Council would like to share our protection protocols with your educational program. We think other species might be interested in learning about child-focused emergency systems. As Professor Valek looked around at the rescued alien students playing safely under the watchful eyes of human protectors, he realized that everything he thought he knew about civilization was wrong. The strongest species in the galaxy was not the one with the best weapons or the most resources. It was the one that made protecting children their highest priority. 3 months after the Aurora rescue, Professor Valek stood before the largest gathering of alien educators in galactic history. The Grand Assembly Hall on the neutral world of Kepler Station was filled with representatives from over 50 different species, all eager to hear about the humans. "Fellow scholars," Professor Valek began, his translated words reaching thousands of alien minds, "today I must share findings that will challenge everything we believe about civilization and survival." In the audience, his former students sat in the front rows. Keth, Velith, Pip, and the others had become ambassadors for human values on their home worlds. Each had stories to tell about how human protection methods were already changing their societies. 3 months ago, I believed that the mark of an advanced species was efficiency, logic, and the preservation of the most valuable individuals, the professor continued. The humans have taught me that true advancement is measured differently. On eye. The large display screen behind him, footage played showing the human rescue fleet responding to the Aurora emergency. The images showed human adults risking everything to save alien children they had never met before. The humans call it the Child Protection Network, Professor Valek explained. Every human settlement, every ship, every colony maintains constant readiness to protect any child of any species anywhere in the galaxy. A Zaran trade leader in the audience raised her delicate wing. "Professor Valek, what do the humans gain from such expensive protection systems?" Before the professor could answer, Keth stood up in the front row. The young Bruthan had grown considerably during his time learning human values. "Honored Elder, the humans gain children who survive to create better futures. This is profit beyond any trade agreement." Murmurs spread through the assembly as species that had never considered child welfare as a priority began to discuss the concept among themselves. On the display screen, new images appeared, showing recent developments across the galaxy. Bruthan worlds were establishing child protection centers based on human designs. Threnody colonies had created new emergency protocols, putting young ones first. Even the logical Zeran trading companies had modified their ships to include child safety systems. "The changes are spreading faster than we anticipated," Professor Valek reported. "Within 2 months of our return, 47 different worlds had requested human advisors to help establish child protection programs." Valith rose from her seat, her musical Threnody voice carrying clearly through the hall. "Honored Assembly, I have seen the results on my homeworld. Since implementing human child protection methods, our young ones show increased learning speeds, better emotional health, and stronger social bonds. Protecting children makes the entire species stronger." A deep voice rumbled from the back of the hall. Elder Thok, the ancient leader of the Bruthan warrior clans, stepped forward. His massive form commanded respect from every species present. "Warriors of the Assembly," Elder Thok announced. "The Bruthan have always measured strength by individual combat skills. The humans have shown us a different kind of strength. A warrior who protects the weak is stronger than one who abandons them." The hall fell silent. Elder Thok's words carried enormous weight among the galactic community. "The human Captain Morrison asked me a question that changed my understanding," the elder continued. "He asked what victory means if we lose our future. Our children are our future. Any species that fails to protect its future has already lost." Professor Valek nodded and activated new displays showing communication logs from across the galaxy. "In the past month alone, we have received over 300 requests from different worlds asking for human child protection specialists. The demand is overwhelming human capacity to respond." Dr. Rebecca Hayes stepped forward from the human delegation section. She had been traveling to different worlds, teaching alien species about child protection methods. "Honored Assembly," Rebecca said, "Earth is prepared to share everything we know about protecting children. Our methods, our technologies, our organizational systems, all freely available to any species that wants to protect their young ones better." "Freely?" questioned a Zaran merchant. "No payment required?" Captain Morrison joined Dr. Hayes at the speaking platform. The only payment we want is the knowledge that children throughout the galaxy are safer. Human children, alien children, all children deserve protection. Michael Rodriguez activated a new display showing a galaxy-wide map. Colored dots indicated worlds that had already implemented human-style child protection systems. The pattern of change was spreading like ripples across space. The revolution is not political or military, Michael explained. It is cultural. Species are choosing to value their children above individual advantage. They are choosing to measure success by how well they protect the vulnerable instead of how efficiently they eliminate them. Elder Thok spoke again, his voice carrying the authority of countless battles. The humans have taught us that true warriors do not fight against the weak. True warriors fight for the weak. Pip, the small Zaran who had been injured during the Aurora emergency, fluttered up to the speaking platform. Her wings had healed completely thanks to human medical care. Assembly members, her tiny voice somehow reached every corner of the hall. I was one of the alien children the humans saved. They did not know me. They did not owe me anything, but they risked their lives for me. Now I work on my homeworld helping establish human-style protection systems. Every child we save makes our species stronger. Professor Valak looked out at the assembly and saw something unprecedented. Species that had been rivals for centuries were working together, sharing resources and knowledge to protect their young ones. The human example had created unity where politics and trade had failed. The humans have given us more than protection methods, Professor Valak concluded. They have given us a new definition of civilization. A species is not advanced because it can destroy its enemies. A species is advanced because it can protect its children. The Assembly voted unanimously to establish the Galactic Child Protection Initiative, with human methods as the foundation. For the first time in galactic history, every species agreed on a single priority. As the session ended, representatives from dozens of worlds approached the human delegation, eager to learn more about protecting children. Captain Morrison watched the crowd with satisfaction. You know, he told Dr. Hayes quietly, I think we may have started something important here. Rebecca smiled as she watched alien species that had never cooperated before working together to plan child protection systems. Jake, I think we may have just changed the entire galaxy. 1 year after the Aurora incident, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the newest vessel in the galactic fleet. The ship was called the Guardian, and it represented something that had never existed before in the history of space travel. Captain Morrison, came a familiar voice behind him. Professor Valak approached, but he looked very different from the scholarly alien who had first greeted the humans. He now wore the blue uniform of the Galactic Child Protection Service, a new organization that had grown from the human example. Professor, Jake smiled. Or should I say Director Valak now? The Threnody leader nodded with what might have been pride. The Galactic Council insisted I take the position. They said I understood human protection methods better than any other. Alien scholar. Through the viewing windows, they could see dozens of ships from different species working together. The Guardian was the flagship of the first truly integrated galactic fleet, with one mission, protecting children throughout the galaxy. Dr. Rebecca Hayes joined them at the observation window. She had been promoted to Chief of Interspecies Child Welfare, a position that had been created specifically for her. The morning reports are encouraging, Rebecca said, holding a data pad. 17 different emergency responses this week alone. Child safety incidents on Zaran trading stations, Bruthan colony worlds, and even Threnody research facilities. Every response followed human protocols. Children first, always, Jake said, repeating what had become the unofficial motto of the Galactic Fleet. Michael Rodriguez approached the group, looking excited. You need to see this, he said, activating a large display screen. The latest survey results from the Galactic Development Council. The screen showed statistics that would have seemed impossible a year ago. Child survival rates had increased by 300% across all species. Educational achievement was up by 200%. Social cooperation between different alien species was at historic highs. But the most interesting statistic is this one, Michael continued, highlighting a specific section. Species that have adopted human child protection methods show dramatically reduced conflicts with their neighbors. Protecting children seems to make entire civilizations more peaceful. Professor Valek studied the data with his scientific mind. It makes sense when you consider the psychology. Species that prioritize protecting the vulnerable are less likely to engage in aggressive behavior against others. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority message. Jake activated the communication system, and the familiar voice of Earth's president filled the observation deck. Captain Morrison, this is President Williams. I wanted to personally thank you and your team for what you have accomplished. The entire galaxy is safer because of your example. Thank you, Madam President, Jake replied, but we were just doing what any human would do. That's exactly why it worked, the president responded. You didn't try to impress anyone or prove human superiority. You just protected children because it was the right thing to do. The galaxy noticed. After the communication ended, the group stood in comfortable silence, watching the mixed fleet of ships working together in space. Each vessel, regardless of species origin, now flew the same symbol. A protective hand extended over representations of young beings from every known species. Captain, a young voice called from behind them. They turned to see Keth approaching, but the former Bruthan warrior student was no longer young. He had grown into a powerful adult and now served as the military coordinator for child protection. Operations. Keth, Rebecca smiled warmly. How are the new recruits training? Excellently, Dr. Hayes. We now have volunteers from 63 different species, all trained in human protection protocols. The Ziran pilots are particularly skilled at emergency evacuations, and the Threnodi make exceptional medical support staff. Keth paused and looked directly at Captain Morrison. Jake, I wanted to tell you something. My homeworld has not had a single child mortality from preventable causes in 8 months. 8 months. Before learning human methods, we lost dozens of young ones every month to what we considered acceptable risks. Professor Valek nodded solemnly. The same is true across Threnodi space. Our scientists estimate that human protection methods have already saved over 10,000 alien children this year alone. A priority alert sounded throughout the ship. Jake moved to the command console and read the incoming message. Emergency. Alert from the Outer Rim, he announced. Colony ship with mixed species families is experiencing life support failure. Multiple children aboard. Estimated time before total system failure is 6 hours. Without hesitation, the entire observation, deck crew moved into action. This had become routine over the past year, but it never felt ordinary. Every child rescue mission was treated as the most important thing in the galaxy. Guardian to all fleet vessels, Jake broadcast. Priority 1 child emergency response. All available ships respond immediately to coordinates being transmitted. Now. Within minutes, 27 ships from a dozen different species had changed course and were racing toward the emergency. The response was automatic, instinctive, and absolute. You know, Dr. Hayes said, as they watched the rescue fleet accelerate away, I think we did more than save those students from the Aurora. I think we saved the galaxy from itself. Professor Valek checked his datapad, which now contained information about child protection operations across thousands of worlds. Dr. Hayes, according to my calculations, the galactic adoption of human child protection principles has prevented more conflicts, saved more lives, and created more cooperation than any diplomatic effort in recorded history. Michael Rodriguez smiled as he watched a Zeran rescue ship working alongside a Bruthan medical vessel, their crews coordinating perfectly despite their species' historical differences. protecting children gave everyone a common purpose, something more important than territorial disputes or resource competition. 6 hours later, they received the success report. All children aboard the colony ship had been rescued and were receiving medical care. Zero casualties, maximum cooperation between species rescue teams. Mission successful, came the report from the rescue commander. All minor passengers evacuated safely. Adult passengers expressed gratitude to the human protection protocols that saved their young ones. Captain Morrison looked around at his diverse crew of humans and aliens, all working together with the single goal of protecting children throughout the galaxy. Final log entry, he said into his personal recorder. The Galactic Child Protection Service is now fully operational. 49 species participate in the program, with more joining every month. Child safety is now the highest priority for every major civilization in known space. He paused, watching through the viewing window as ships from former enemy species worked together to establish a new child protection station. We came to space to represent humanity in a cultural exchange program. Instead, we seem to have taught the galaxy what it means to be truly civilized. The measure of a species is not its weapons or its wealth. The measure of a species is how well it protects those who cannot protect themselves. Professor Valak approached him one final time. Captain Morrison, the Galactic Council has asked me to extend a formal request. They want Earth to establish a permanent child protection authority with jurisdiction across all member worlds. Jake considered the request carefully. What would that mean? It would mean that human child protection principles become galactic law. Any species that joins the Galactic Council would be required to adopt human-style child welfare systems. Dr. Hayes looked out at the peaceful fleet of mixed-species ships working together. A year ago, that would have seemed impossible. A year ago, Michael added, we were just trying to survive an emergency evacuation. Captain Morrison made his decision. Tell the Galactic Council that Earth accepts their request, but with one condition. What condition? Professor Valak asked. Jake smiled as he watched an alien child laugh with joy aboard one of the rescue ships. The authority doesn't belong to Earth. It belongs to the children. All of them. Every species. Everywhere in the galaxy. We're just the guardians. And so the galaxy learned the most important lesson humanity could teach. That true strength comes not from conquering others, but from protecting those who need protection most.